All right.
Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the next episode of the Mint Mob Podcast. Jason here, joined by my buddy Alex across the pond in Germany. We're going to jump into the usual stuff, maybe talk a little nostalgia. But before we do, let's check in with Alex. How's it going, buddy? How are you?
Hey man, I'm good. Yeah, I'm very happy. You know, it's Monday. On Friday we had another batch mint. It's been a while since we had a male batch mint, and it was definitely special. You know, when people show up, when they mint the art, you know, we get new collectors every time, and they discover all the traits we have. And it's actually funny because just a couple days ago, I think I was on X, and I saw some old Art of Mob pieces on my timeline, and it was actually pieces that had hand traits that I've never seen before. And do you know if there are original hand traits that we never used? And you know, obviously we licensed the art. It's the GoodFellas art now, and we got like a folder of pieces and everything. A lot of traits were added that were created by Jason, but yeah, we also obviously also took the OG traits that Jason and I loved so much back then. So, do you remember if there were traits we never used for the Goodfellas collection?
We used pretty much all of them. There were a few traits that weren't really up to par that we dropped, but it was very minor. There's a pair of glasses that really don't work with many pieces that I left out. And then there was a handcuffs trait that originally wasn't very good. And then I had Luis redraw it. And then when I had him redraw it, he's like, well, I never drew this in the first place. Someone else had drawn it.
Mm-hmm.
I think because he wasn't getting paid or something had happened, and he basically refused to do the work or didn't do the work for whatever reason. So, you know, his version of the hand trait was beautiful versus the version that whoever had done really wasn't. So like all of those types of things, for the most part, we used everything there, like I said, but maybe 2 or 3 different traits. And then of course we've added traits over the years, but yeah, for the most part, everything has been used.
Yeah, because like I think I saw 2 or 3 traits which did not really look good, but I just wondered if you at some point, you know, when you selected the traits. I remember you did the boss all the ordinals first, of course. And I'd just like to send you right now. Maybe we can share in the boss channel so people who are listening to the podcast can see that as well. And I'd just like to know whether these traits were even included in what we got or not. So if you want to check your Telegram now, I can show you.
Sure, yeah.
For example, like this one here is actually a trait. I think I'm seeing it for the first time ever. Like, have you ever seen that for the audience? So it's basically flowers, not like the sunflower we have. Yeah, but have you ever seen that trait?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I have. I haven't used it much. I wanted to. There was an issue with it for whatever reason, but yeah, I haven't used it much. I don't know if I included it in any of the batches previously. I think I was going to change the coloration of it or something. But yeah, it's. I like the way that the hand is done on that one. It's done really well. But yeah, no, that one I have definitely seen many times. Yeah.
And what about this one? Because you actually recreated that, kind of, in a much cooler way, in my opinion. But like for some reason, I feel like I've never seen that trait.
Oh no, I've definitely seen that trait many times. This was one of the traits that I liked as well. But the hands are not well done. They're okay, but they're not well done. So I didn't want to like include them without redrawing them first. So yeah.
Okay, so that trait was actually part of the folder we got, and I think this trait is also not included in the Goodfellas collection. We'll share all these images in the Discord, so you once you listen to the podcast episode, you can see what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a bouquet.
It's actually a knife.
Yeah, a knife. Yeah, that's a good one too. I like that one as well. I haven't used a lot of it. I like the karambit that was in the other collection. Yeah, I think is a better,
yeah,
like even better. Well, like this knife is pretty good actually. and it can certainly be used. But I didn't like the way the dripping was done on it. Just being super picky, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
most people are not even going to care. But like all of these little things are things that I key off of when I'm doing a collection. And then of course, when we're doing batches, we're adding traits in bit by bit over time. So some of these traits I wanted to save for later batches and perfect them
Mm-hmm.
before releasing them.
Oh, so we're probably not supposed to share them right now, but I get what you mean by the like with the dripping on it, because it kind of reminded me of the ice cream trait we have, right? When
Yes.
the like it's kind of dripping on its hands as well, and
Hmm.
on that trait, on that knife, there is no reason for that dripping right now.
Yeah, it's the same way on the sword trait. Like there's it's really cool the way it's done. Like this was a fantastic idea, and I think it works. It's like it's basically like a K-bar knife, So if you guys are familiar with military knives, like it's a K-bar. It's a single-sided knife, and it's got like a saw on the back, and then the dripping down the blade is meant to be like stylized blood, right? So the blood isn't red, it's not gory. It's like these vibrant neon colors, these pinks and blues and greens and stuff like that, which is a really cool way of portraying, something that would normally be perceived as violence. So it's really, really well done, but it could be a little bit better. So just being the picky, dickhead that I am sometimes, I like to really um, like redo a piece or make the piece better before releasing it. So, but yeah, these are all fantastic traits, and we can certainly bring them in at some point.
Yeah, for some reason I didn't remember these traits, but it's always like a joy to look at our art and especially when it's kind of combined, even if it's just for me, because obviously you remembered, but with new traits, it kind of gave it like a new view on these pieces. I just wondered, like, if if you I mean, we keep talking about comic books and everything, and I feel like the art we have and the brand we have works or fits so good for a comic book. What do you think if we had like even a cartoon or a show or something? Do you feel like these pieces, especially not having a face, obviously you can do a lot with the faces and animations and everything, when you uh, cannot really have communication without a mouth and everything. Do you think that would work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the stories might be a little different, but I mean, the story of the face can, to me, speaks to stories about identity and how you can either lose your identity or gain an identity. So there's tons of stories that are being told around these particular pieces. But like
Hmm.
on the traits that you've posted into Telegram that I'm looking at, like like for those of you guys who have seen, like a criminal being photographed for mugshots, they're holding that number in front of their chest. There was a piece that was done with that trait for the original collection, and like when I'm looking back at these traits, I'm realizing and remembering why I didn't use them. Like that particular trait, if you look at uh, the spelling on it, so it says police department, and then it has number 10,000. And then the bottom it says serial. It's supposed to say screen shooter, but they spelled shooter wrong. So it spells serial screenshot but if it were shot, it would have two T's, and if it were shoot, it would have two O's. So it's spelled wrong either way you say it. So that obviously didn't want to use that, right? And two, like it looks a little bit cartoony, so that's why I didn't use that one. So like all of these traits haven't been used for very specific reasons, but in the context of a story, they can all be used. And in the context of storytelling, the lack of face, earning a face, losing a face, having skin traits that look different can all be used for identities. And there's a ton of stories you can tell around identities and earning them and losing them. And I mean, that's really what, most redemption stories are about, whether it's, Star Wars or freaking, The Godfather. It's all about who the character is becoming. So yeah, I mean, it wouldn't infringe on storytelling at all, really.
Yeah, I meant it in the way that these characters do not have like the ability to speak. Like would it need to, like, do we have to make like silent films and bring them back, or do you feel like we could just add voices to the characters?
Well, that's just it. Like that's a decision we would make, right? Like we don't know that they can't speak. That's just something that you've assumed in this conversation, right? We we might assume that they can speak, but that they don't require, like a human mouth to speak, for example, right? Maybe they communicate
Yeah,
in a
that's
different
true. That's
way.
possible. Yeah.
And there are a lot of characters like this in comics already. Like the Phantom, for example, doesn't have a face. Or like the Invisible Man from like 1900. Like all of these, stories where there's no human face portrayed, but the characters still find a way to communicate. So it's not going to impact that at all. And when you're creating something that's like an animation specifically, you can literally do anything you want. And now with AI and AI movies, people are, there's the first AI movie is supposed to be released in like 2 or 3 months, I think. And,
Hmm.
you can do literally anything you want to with the characters. So you can give them no face or like no mouth and still have them communicate in some way or make noises or whatever it is that you want to do, however you want to tell that story. You're only limited by your imagination.
Absolutely, but I mean, you still need like some sort of origin story, like what is the world they live in? Like, are they living on Earth? Are there other people? Are there people with normal faces? And this is like just a race among these people. There are actually so many cool stories you can tell and think of. But that would actually be quite cool. Obviously, if you started with a comic, um, it would be much easier. But I'd love to see a good story around the Goodfellas, right? And of course, incorporate the woman later. And yeah, we haven't thought about kids yet, but there's so much fun stuff you can build around that brand, and this is so cool. When it comes to the traits I just shared, I totally get it. The bouquet is actually a pretty good idea, but I'm not a big fan of the execution here. You already spoke about the police department sign. I think you did a much cooler piece with the not is it NYPD? Yeah, I think
Yeah,
it's
NYPD.
NYPD sign. Yeah, and the knife is actually pretty cool. You already said that. You can argue about the dripping, but yeah, in the end, I feel like there are endless possibilities of things you can do, with the characters and with the brand of Goodfellas, right?
Yeah, and the police department sign, the one that I replaced it with, is more realistic, and the number, the
Hmm.
actual number that represents like that particular booking was from Frank Sinatra. So Frank Sinatra was arrested back in the day, and there's a famous picture of him holding a police sign, in his mugshot, and so the number that you see on the Goodfellas mugshot sign is the same case number that Frank Sinatra had when he was arrested. So it's a little trivia.
Yeah, that's
Little trivia
actually
for you.
that's actually so that's actually so cool because it's like such a little detail. But as you know when we are on spaces and we have mint parties and everything, and we drop new pieces from artists or whatever. Collectors usually show up and pay attention to these details, right? So they ask like, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? If you just dropped that police department piece, people would have asked like, hey, why is it number 10,000? And you probably would have no answer. So yeah, I mean that kind of tells the story of how much thoughts went into the serial screen shooter piece.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like when you're talking about storytelling, I mean, it really comes down to how you weave worlds together, you know? And when you weave worlds together, there has to be some sort of common thread in the world building. And most NFT
Mhm.
projects when they started out, they had this really weak attempt at creating some sort of lore. And there was, a few paragraphs about, some random alien race or some random happenstance or some random creature that did this thing and it's now has come to the NFT world to take over, and like all these stupid fucking ridiculous nonsense, shitty lore stories. They're so bad and so poorly written, but that's all that you needed at the time, so people were doing it. So what we did was we're like, we're not going to do that. We're just going to put out good art, and then we can fill the story in later as the story starts to materialize. And so a big part of the storytelling that we'll be doing obviously will be, tying these worlds together. You're seeing that in the metadata, which I mentioned on Spaces, but also like the ties to the real world that we live in, like the mafia ties. I went to the mob museum in Vegas when we were there recently. And, pulled a ton of ideas from that. But the existing ties, like this Sinatra mugshot that I posted into Telegram, like a
Hmm.
lot of people they're not going to pick up on these things until they start doing a little bit of a deeper dive into the art and what it represents. And then that's when you really start, grabbing onto the story. So, in the traits, in the traits for the different pieces, there's different names of suits, different names for head traits and that sort of thing. And a lot of these head traits are the names of characters from movie and film. A lot of them have to do with stories that have already been told. A lot of them have to do with lore that just existed in different neighborhoods. Like the term "GoodFellas" just came from like the neighborhood that the mafia or the mob was operating in, right? They called each other "Goodfellas," right? That's how they referenced one another, and it's just been a generic term. It was not a movie first; it was a term first that was turned into a movie, right? Just like Wise Guys or all the rest of the stuff. And so all of these things have a history somewhere, and we want to honor that history and touch on it here and there. And of course, Frank Sinatra is known for having some ties to the mob. Obviously, he did, huge stints and made a lot of money in Vegas. Of course, Vegas was known for being like a mob town in terms of casinos, but it wasn't actually founded by the mob. It was actually an Indian community back in the day. So, all of these different bits of lore have a place in the artwork that we do and in the story that we're going to tell. And as we formalize that, if we start putting out comics and, working with, like people who are really good at telling stories and building in story arcs, like you were talking about watching the new season of Stranger Things, which will just be a new story arc. You already had the first 3 or 4 seasons. Each one had its own story arc. You can do the same thing with pretty much any character. It's just a matter of coming up with the story that you want to tell and then picking the characters or making the characters look like what they need to look like to fit the bill rather than the other way around, which is kind of the way it was in the beginning.
Is it just my impression, or does any kind of mafia theme story that is obviously publicly known and popular, for some reason in my perception, that all comes from the 80s and 90s? Like, does like the mafia exist nowadays? Like, where are they? Like, why is everyone referring to these cool suits and the way they speak and always Italian and all that stuff? That all comes from probably from 80s movies, right?
Not really. A lot of it comes from real world events back in the early 19th century or the early 1900s, right? So basically, a lot of these organizations sprang up around the Prohibition. And in the U.S., we had the prohibition of alcohol for about 10 years, and this basically created a tremendous opportunity for people to run alcohol as like an underground drug, so to speak, right? And if you had control over the booze in the towns and the distribution channels, you were basically building an organization that was making tons of money off of, like this black market alcohol, right? And it wasn't just Italians, it was Irish, it was Jewish. There were shit tons of different races and creeds and ethnicities involved in the market. And so like when you go through the Mob Museum, for example, some of the most famous stories had to do with Italian figures, but the Italians, the Jews, the Irish, they were all involved in this sort of underground, alcohol play. And the same thing in the South, like you had a bunch of Southerners running alcohol and running from the cops, which is where NASCAR came from. Like all this stock car racing came from who had the fastest car, who could outrun the cops, right? That's where it came from. It's like, well, I outran the cops, you outran the cops. Like, who's got the fastest car? Let's race and let's find out. That's the origins of NASCAR, right? So like all of these different things touch on just this one act of stupidity from the U.S. government, which was the abolition of alcohol sales for about 10 years, right? So yeah, definitely not just the Italians. It's just so happened that in particular communities, when immigrants came to the U.S., the U.S. wasn't this magic melting pot. It was people lived with communities of people that they were like and that they understood. So Italians lived with Italians, the Irish lived with the Irish, the Jews lived with the Jews, right? And they kind of made their own little communities inside the US, and then they did business together, and that's how it all sprang forth.
Yeah, that perfectly makes sense. I mean, that's the origin. What I meant is like if you ask like the average guy, and I can obviously only speak for people of my generation, I feel like when you speak about the mafia, if you ask them like, "Hey, what comes to your mind first when you think about the mafia?" It's probably things like, you know, Al Pacino, Ray Liotta, all these guys from 80s or 90s movies. That's what they think the mafia is like. And I feel like, you know, these kind of things haven't really been around in the last 10, 15 years. I'm not sure if, you know, the if you know if film companies do not cover that anymore, or if I maybe like do not watch enough like movies or shows like that. But I feel like it has been very popular like around the 80s and 90s, and that was definitely very, very significant for, you know, painting the image of what the mafia is like for the average guy, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, of course, in the last two, maybe 2.5 decades, the the foothold that you would have seen in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, sort of culminating in the 80s and early 90s, all of that stuff has been quelled, sort of lessened over the years, and due in large part to new federal laws that allowed these guys, these racketeering laws that allowed these guys, the feds to go after like family members, to go after bank accounts, property, like all the wealth that would have been associated with any criminal enterprise could be confiscated. So it made the risk, go through the roof, basically. So a lot of the business and the rackets that they were engaged in back in the day, if they were caught or found out in any way, shape, or form to be associated with a federal crime, like a racketeering type law, then everything that they had generated could not be shielded anymore. It could literally be confiscated and taken by the feds. And so that put a huge damper on like organized crime, because that was a huge, that was a big thing. Like if you were in a particular state or city, you had to adhere to those laws, or you could be prosecuted under those laws, but you couldn't necessarily go after someone's family or their family wealth. And now with racketeering laws, they could certainly do that. So it changed everything.
Crazy, man. Crazy. But yeah, how did we get here? Speaking about the possibilities of, the GoodFellas brand and all we can do with it. But usually when we start the episodes, we jump into the markets a little bit. And I see that, markets have been pretty heated. Everything is in the reds, and I'm betting you already placed your orders on Bitcoin already. Am I correct?
Oh, definitely made some buys. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like I saw that obviously it's December 1st today, and we saw a big dump overnight. It was overnight for me. Bitcoin went to 83 at its lowest. And there was no real reason. I think we haven't had any news or a tweet, or I think we even have the Fed ending QT, and people, thought that this might be a bullish sign. And now we are here. Now we have ETH, I think, lost like 10%. Solana as well, pretty big red numbers. Yeah, pretty good point to buy. I mean, I personally feel like we are probably not going to see, that rally everyone expected towards the end of the year, and I'm still waiting for it to go a little lower. It might be a little gambling here, but I feel like we might see Bitcoin in the 70s in the coming days. So I'm waiting for that. But yeah, have you seen any news or any reasons for the recent dump?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about AI now is you can have AI scour the net and tell you what's going on. So like, if you just throw the query out to Grok, you can get some reasons, and you can also get some numbers really quickly. So this sell-off, AI is telling us that basically more leverage and liquidations over about 800 billion in perpetual futures again. Perpetual futures and leverage, right? $800 billion, right? So that's half the market cap that was lost right there. I believe it was 1 point, let's see. Oh yeah, okay. So the sell-off erased 150 billion in market cap, and 800 billion of the selling came from leverage liquidations, right? And then we've got another big thing that happened in Europe that scared a lot of people was CryptoMixer.io was basically seized by Europol. So, and what CryptoMixer was doing was basically obfuscating Bitcoin transactions. So you have there's a service that's called a coin join. So like if I send you Bitcoin, I can run it through a coin join where it'll mix up the Bitcoin with a bunch of other transactions. And then ultimately on the other end, you get the same amount, but it comes from like 100 different places, right? And so Crypto Mixer was basically doing that. And like Europol saw this as fraud, like, this way of defrauding the government of its, of its owed taxation, right? Like of all the tariffs and nonsense and taxes that the feds don't produce, any value to create, but they want to steal money from you, right? So they got to get theirs. And so they shut Crypto Mixer down, and that was worth $1.3 billion. They seized over a terabyte of data, and they're holding something like $30 million of Bitcoin from that particular raid. So, there you go. You got, I think this was Germany and Switzerland. So your home country, man. You didn't make headlines in Germany?
Actually, I didn't read anything about that. Not sure what's like. Are they confiscating Bitcoins or what are they doing?
They shut down the service and confiscated the service's Bitcoin is what I read.
Oh, okay, so they didn't get any Bitcoin. They probably would have waited for it to go to 50,000 and sell it then again.
No, it said they got 30 million worth of Bitcoin. So, I mean, I don't know if they're doing anything with it, but that's what they supposedly confiscated.
Did you also read about rumors of, I think we spoke about strategy last time, but again, people are saying that that Michael Saylor kind of gets in the situation that he will have to sell Bitcoin. I think he made a post today and announced that they will have some sort of USD reserve to be able to pay their debts. I'm not sure if that was correct. Let me just check again. Michael Saylor, I think he did, and I think he bought like a couple Bitcoin again. But that's interesting. Like people, it feels like people are just waiting for MicroStrategy to collapse, and this would would maybe mark the bottom of the next cycle. But are you convinced that Mr. Saylor is going to survive?
I don't see any reason why they wouldn't based on their buys. I mean, again, I can only go by what they publish and what Saylor puts forth. And the good thing about Strategy is that they are a public company, so he's not really allowed to go on the news and hype up what they're doing. He's not allowed to sort of lie or countermand some of the information that goes out to the investors. So because it's a public company, he's bound by legality to more or less tell the truth, right? Now that doesn't mean they can't lie with some accounting, but for the most part, what he's put forth to investors, Bitcoin could basically fall to almost nothing and they still don't have any liability because they're not forced to make the payments, right? So this is the thing that people are not understanding. When you have debt that's structured the way that they structured it, you don't necessarily have a hard maturity date or a hard payment due date. And because of that, they can hang around and wait, right? And so when they're raising money the way that they've raised money, it's not the same as like the average person went to the bank and established, a loan for a house and he has monthly payments due. And if he misses a monthly payment for 2 or 3 months, the bank forecloses. That's not the same thing. That's not what's happening here. When their debt matures the way that they've structured it, their debt can be paid back on flexible terms, right? So unless and until their debt puts them in a position to be a forced seller, there's no need for them to sell anything. And in fact, they bought another 12 million over the weekend, right? So as long as they're not forced to sell, then MicroStrategy or strategy at this point will be just fine.
When I checked the news today, I checked the comments, and someone was saying something like, Michael is actually like pulling the same scam that he did like 20 years ago, and he attached some sort of chart that looked like a pump and dump scheme. What did he do in the past that people say things like, I'm not aware of anything he did in the past, so maybe you know.
I'm not familiar with this. No, I'd have to go back and look. So I have no knowledge of what that's referencing.
Okay. Okay, because it looked like he already had a company back then and was, I don't know, selling stocks or doing whatever, and kind of that kind of collapsed. I'm not sure. I'd have to do the research and see what that meant. But yeah, I mean, in the end, I feel like Saylor is pretty convincing in what he does. He's very convinced of Bitcoin, and I feel like people shouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, in the end, what's going to happen? Like, even if MicroStrategy collapses, and everyone sells and blah blah blah, this might be the opportunity of a lifetime, right? Like, if that happened and they had to sell everything and people panicked and sold everything, you'd probably get Bitcoin for 20 grand again, right? And I'd love to see that actually.
Well, I mean, you have to think about it in terms of reality. Is the entire industry of Bitcoin, which constitutes, I mean, we think about investors or hodlers, if you will, as being the market, but the market isn't investors. These are the people who are trying to acquire the asset. But there's a whole flip side of people who are trying to manufacture the asset, meaning there's a ton of miners and a ton of validators out there,
Yep.
keeping track of transactions. And in order for Bitcoin to fail, like, we have to stop mining Bitcoin altogether, and it has to go to like a completely upside down valuation to its production cost. And that hasn't happened yet, right? And the companies that did mine Bitcoin have set enough aside so that, in times of trouble, they could sell some Bitcoin or either borrow against it to, fund their operation in the short term. So, I mean, I think people forget that, businesses and business people aren't stupid, and if you own a mining company, whether you're, Eric Trump or whoever, and you're starting American Bitcoin and you've got a new Bitcoin mine that's being built in the US, or you're in, bumblefuck Egypt somewhere and you're mining in the middle of the Himalayas, for basically cheap and free energy, or like in the Canadian tundra where, energy is basically free or cheap, or like Norway where you don't have to worry about, heat and computers blowing up due to climate or temperature. Like, you can make it profitable if you're smart. And so in order for Bitcoin to go to zero, every one of these people would have to be upside down for an extended period of time, and people would have to stop buying it. And you would have to bank on the fact that the investors with means wouldn't just buy up all the Bitcoin, right? So like, if Bitcoin went to $1, I'd buy as many dollars worth of Bitcoin as I could possibly afford, which is going to prevent it from going to zero. And so would every other investor. So for me, like, my threshold might be $1, but some billionaire somewhere, his threshold might be 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000 or 40,000. And maybe he deploys, $1 billion into the marketplace to buy up Bitcoin when it hits that price, and then of course, if he's not selling, where does the price have to go? It has to go back up. So again,
But
it's very difficult to kill a multi-trillion-dollar industry.
yeah, absolutely. You just mentioned mining, and I think last time I read about the average production cost, which was, I think, in late November, it was around 103 to 106,000, which means miners are currently operating at a loss with their mining activities, which is actually interesting because I remember when that happened for the first time before the halving or right after the halving. People were like, okay, this is a reason why prices need to go up now, because obviously, miners are dying, they stop, and you'll have less Bitcoin production. I'm not even sure what the exact outcome was, but the truth is that it seems like it doesn't affect anything right now, right? What's like what would the miner do right now when they operate at a loss? Like, does it matter or not?
Okay, so mining costs by region is what we're what we're talking about, and this is going to come down to electricity rates, right? So right now in Iran, it costs $1,300 to mine one Bitcoin. In Kuwait, it costs 26,000. In Paraguay, South America, 34,000. Texas, it costs 34 to 40,000. Russia, 34 to 50,000. Kazakhstan, anywhere from 40 to 100. I'm just going around the globe here looking at average costs. So we can look at the costs per Bitcoin based on like what AI is telling me right now, or we can look at what the fear mongers are trying to tell you in the real world. Now these numbers might be low, but when you're looking at electricity rates and then you pair that out to the number of basically submissions that a miner is going to throw at a block, right? Like when a block is created, a miner is out there and it's throwing numbers at it, and it's basically trying to cash in a lottery ticket. That's what it's doing. It just keeps throwing numbers at it, trying to solve the block. And so you have hundreds of thousands of miners across the world trying to win the block, right? So there's a percentage of those efforts that's going to be successful based on hash power. And then there's a cost to those efforts, and that comes down to electricity costs. So the greatest cost or the greatest thing in terms of your business here is going to be maintaining the equipment, which is probably going to be very much secondary to paying your electrical bill, right? Or paying your power bill if you're pulling electricity from, like the core of the earth, right? Like if you're pulling heat energy from the earth or solar power from the sun, right? Like all of these things are going to impact your profitability. And so we can't just simply say, oh, well, it's $100,000 to mine a Bitcoin, because that doesn't make any sense. Depending on your particular setup and your situation, it's going to be very different, right? So I don't know where that number came from or what the data shows. But when you look at electricity rates and then the percentage odds of actually winning a block, that's what matters the most.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to blame Google AI. Actually, that's what told me the average price. But I see that in on X all the time. When people claim, hey, a production cost for a Bitcoin is, I don't know, whatever amount, and it perfectly makes sense. Of course, what you just said. Obviously there are factors like electricity prices, hardware, and I don't know what, that definitely affects the price. And in the end, I feel like most people are trying to mine in areas or regions where electricity is very, very cheap. So I think you just mentioned, like, what was like the cheapest place to mine Bitcoin? Was it like Kazakhstan or something?
Well, according to this AI report, it's Iran, but that's based on, like
Iran.
the
Okay.
price of electricity, right? And it's because
Hmm.
electricity is subsidized. And then, of course, Kuwait and the Middle East, same thing. Like where you have these oil-rich nations, they're subsidizing electricity rates with the sales of natural resources, right? Which
Hmm.
just makes sense because, I mean, if they, if the Saudi royal family somehow wants to, mine Bitcoin, and at the end of the day, or like in Dubai or someplace like that, where we have these massive oil-rich families. I mean, $1 billion is nothing to them. Like they transact in billions and multiple billions of dollars on a daily basis, right? So if they want to set up a mine and mine Bitcoin, I mean, just like they've built ski slopes in the middle of the desert, they're going to do that. Like, obviously, if they can freeze water in the middle of the desert and make indoor ski slopes, they're not going to be worried about whether or not they can pay the electricity bill on a Bitcoin mine. You know what I'm saying? It's the dumbest shit ever. Like, if you have all the money in the world and you can mine more money, why wouldn't you? Is the question. So for people who say that like Bitcoin is vaporware and it's going to zero, they're just not paying attention. Like, if we can again freeze water in the middle of the desert and have indoor ski slopes and high rises, we can set up a Bitcoin mine pretty much anywhere in the world. And there's someone who can afford to fund it, even if Bitcoin goes to 10 cents a token. Right. So, I mean, like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, like, in the short run, we can we can make all the different arguments, and we can, sit here and go back and forth. Well, this person and that person and this central bank and that central bank. But I mean, the truth is banks are adopting stable coins and crypto. That was part of, I think, the Genius Act or whatever, act was recently passed so that banks could custody stable tokens. Wealthy people want to transact quickly, securely, and privately. That's blockchain. That's fast. That's Bitcoin. And at the end of the day, the benefits outweigh the detriments by far. So as long as you're not operating illegally, like this one company that I told you was taken down, I think they were operating on the dark net, like probably running like a Tor node, something like that, and of course they were being perceived as money laundering, like a money laundering scheme. I mean, if that's what you're doing, then yeah, your risk of shutdown is going to be great. But as long as Bitcoin is being purchased, I think there's something like, what did Saylor say? Something like, I forget the number of Bitcoin produced every day, like 400 or something like that. There's more investment that's willing to pick it up than to sell it. I mean, the price is going to hover somewhere around where it's at. Like it might fluctuate up and down, but for the most part, if the supply is bought up every day, then the sellers would really have to gang up and sell. And there's only so much you can sell before a buyer in the marketplace decides to pick it up, right? So, I mean, the projection of failure is just, it's unfounded at this point. Like, I'm not saying it can't fail, it certainly can, but it's still unfounded at this point based on adoption and based on what we're seeing.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, if you look at the big image, you can actually, like, all you see is good news on Bitcoin, right? I mean, I read posts today about people being kind of not really mad, but more disappointed of the whole Trump administration. Trump's famous quote, "You'll get tired of winning," and people keep repeating that, and obviously nobody's tired of winning yet. But and of course, if you add the things he did with his meme coin, with Melania's meme coin, which basically went to zero. It didn't make a great impression, but I think if you put that aside, the future is definitely bright with all the things happening. I think we have a Powell speech coming up in a couple hours, which is always pretty significant. As I said, QT ends, quantitative tightening, I think, and this is usually a good thing for the markets, right?
Generally, it's good for asset prices. Now, whether that's good for the market or not is up to your interpretation. It's not good for the average person because basically it signals inflation, right? So it's good for asset prices, and so that could very easily shift the buying populace or the population of investors to start buying risk assets again. I mean, it just depends on your viewpoint. So I'm not going to say it's good or bad, but it generally signals price inflation or prices rising in fixed assets, right? Whether it's real estate or what have you. So, and a bad economy is basically what signals them to lower rates because they want more money changing hands. So the easier money is to get, the better and faster it changes hands, the more business can be done, et cetera, so on and so forth. So the whole idea behind the interest rates is if interest rates are high, money is tight, it's harder to borrow, your payments are higher, you have to run leaner, you have to be smarter, versus if interest rates are lower, money is cheaper, it's easier to get, your payments are less, so you can run a little bit looser with your business and your CapEx expenditures and your borrowing and that sort of thing. So it's basically one of those things. And again, like whether it's good or bad depends on who you are. If you're the average person, inflation is bad. But if you're someone who owns assets, inflation can be very good for you because your assets, the valuation of your assets in terms of dollars can go through the roof.
Yeah, so let's see what Powell is going to say, and let's see if we get a little pre-Christmas rally. That's what I read about today. But one thing is for sure, post-Christmas is going to be pretty good this year because we, as like the GoodFellas, have planned something for the final days of the year, for the days between Christmas and New Year's Eve. which are always a little, after Christmas, you ate a lot, you feel a little slow, you wait for the new year to start so you can finally start going to, to the gym. And, we have the perfect plan for these days. We have no final name for the series yet, right?
That is correct. Yeah. It's all still in its infancy, and we're just getting to the point where we're, talking to artists. So we've got a lot of work to do, obviously.
So we have planned to have a series of drops similar to October. At the end of the year, we will have what can we say? Like, what's sure? Like, we will have 7 artists. We will have 7 mint days from from 25th to when? Man, I need to count now.
Basically to the first, right? So you have 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and then the first is the 7th day. So from the 26th through the 1st would be when we would run this event. And again, that week we're just targeting that week because there's so much not happening, right? Like everybody has been doing the family thing. Christmas is sort of culminated at the end of the year. We're kind of looking forward to the new year and what we're going to create. So that whole week leading up to the 1st is really about contemplation. It's really about planning. It's really about renewal and creating new things. And so the theme of the event that we want to create is just going to focus on, releasing beautiful pieces that are related to those ideas. And we'll do one per day leading up to the 1st.
Yep, absolutely. Looking forward to that. I loved the vibe we had when we had October. Every one of us coming together every day, and looking at the art, minting together, trying to get your numbers and everything. That was awesome. So I'm looking forward to that. What else do we have? We will once more. It's been a while since we did that the last time, but obviously we had some attention and eyes on us on October, and some new collectors joined. So we might open the doors to the boss table once more and give people the opportunity to join it, or maybe go maybe get another boss or something. So keep your eyes open for that. And what else? What else? What else? Did I forget anything? Of course, yeah. Much appreciation for the batch mint. This was probably the fastest batch sellout we ever had. Some people didn't even manage to mint. Yeah, crazy. Didn't think that this was that this was happen. Obviously, because we are used to mint 21 pieces. It's been a while since we had the last batch of 100, and you never know if people show up. But you showed so much love again, and you loved the batch, and that was great. Obviously, Jason is preparing staking for the pieces, and we still have to convert all the remaining batch pieces to core, the male pieces. And I think you are working on something that lets people stake their pieces without, locking them, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to have to lock anything. Basically, I don't see a need for that really. Staking is cool and that sort of thing, but I don't want to have a piece like locked into any particular scenario. Obviously, we've had an issue with Floppy Labs, and of course, converting to core, gets us out of the Floppy Labs problem. But the truth is, the staking is really like a rewards program, so we want to set it up that way such that as long as you're not listing your pieces are earning rewards. The minute you list a piece, you stop earning rewards and you lose everything up to that point. So the truth is, if we have a system that we can create that'll just look at all the pieces and look when they're staked, when they're listed or not, when they're purchased or when they're held, and then do the calculation. You could just go to a website and plug your wallet in, let the system do the calculations, and then process your reward. That's the way it should be, I think. And then that way you don't have to do anything in terms of moving pieces in and out of this and that and the other thing. It doesn't make any sense to me. and it should be easier than it is. And so this is, I think, is just part of the evolution of the idea of staking for NFTs. That'd be different if it were tokens, maybe on, Solana, you're earning interest. That's kind of a different thing. But for NFTs, like, it's really a rewards program, and that's really what I think it should look like.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, I've never been a big fan of, locking your pieces away. And this is like from a tech perspective, it's basically so people will not get the rewards airdropped, but will have to claim them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be completely voluntary, right? So I'm not, I got a couple of questions about like the work in progress NFTs from a couple people. They're like, well, I didn't get mine. I'm like, that's right. You didn't ask for it. I'm not just going to randomly send pieces out to people who didn't ask for them, like, so, if you want the piece, just like I said on Spaces and in Discord multiple times, just send me a message showing me that you own the original and I'll send you the work in progress. Simple, not a problem. And then people are like, well, like we should just drop it out anyway. And I'm like, well, if I do that, then it's going to go to wallets that may or may not care or may or may not even want the piece. So you have to show me that you want the piece, right? So same thing with staking rewards. If you want to hold ARM and you want to participate in the coming marketplace, then you need to demonstrate an interest and go get your ARM. It's not my place to like find you, track you down, and distribute stuff to you, and if you're in 52 Discord servers and you're having trouble, keeping up, well, the truth is you're in too many, and you need to focus on what the quality projects are, and we're one of those projects. So I'm not going to like chase people down who are doing too much and trying to, spread themselves too thin and this and that and the other thing. No, like if you're here and you're part of what we're doing, we love you. We want to continue to see that happen. But, there's a certain amount of responsibility that we as collectors have to take when we are part of a project or, in our case, a movement. Like we want to create a movement of like growing artwork on Solana because it's the best place for it. That's just the truth. So at the end of the day, show an interest and come get your stuff and it'll be there waiting on you. But if you don't, it's not going to come find you. You need to plug in.
What I'd like to know is, would like the reward be? Obviously, you haven't done that yet, so I'm just asking, like, what your plan is. Like, would the reward be tied to the piece, or would like if you, for example, like I don't know, sold the piece, do like the coins expire, like the rewards?
Yeah, for sure. So like when the piece changes hands, the clock would start over, so to speak, right? And that's only fair. So you would want to come claim, like if you wanted the Aurum and you're going to sell a piece, just claim your Aurum before you sell it, or trade or claim.
Yeah, it's like it's not like just selling it. I mean, what if people like send it to another wallet? Just like what happens then?
Yeah, again, claim your Aurum before you let go of the piece. That simple, really simple. Like it's not complex at all. Claim your Aurum before you let go of the piece, whether you list it, sell it, trade it, whatever. Like it's that simple.
Okay, yeah. So you heard it here first. Yeah, makes sense. I mean, in the end, people are responsible, and I think most of them are just holding their pieces in their wallet anyway. But yeah, like I said, I love the idea of not having to go to a staking page, lock it away, and wait, and then it's locked for a period of time, and you feel like, okay, now I don't know, maybe I want to list it, maybe I forget about it, maybe you get issues with the staking page and pieces are locked forever, which obviously happened already. And yeah, this is a great thing. So keep your eyes open for the Boss Table to open its doors, and like let's see what we do. Maybe we list bosses on Magic Eden, or we tell people that they can reach out or something like that. And then, of course, keep an eye out for the final series of the year. We are cooperating with Maria. She is involved as well. And yeah, I think we'll speak on Spaces about that, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And, Maria has some interest in, maybe moving some of her pieces to Solana. So, this is one of those things where we're going to start helping people who are interested in, coming to a platform that's really conducive to, coding and moving pieces around quickly, simply, easily, cost effectively. and with a growing base. And so, we're going to have that conversation as well. And then we'll start obviously reaching out to other people with other collections who want to do the same thing. So this will be one of those services that we can provide once we've started, building a reputation for that as well.
Absolutely, that's going to be awesome. And one more thing, I'm going to be a little copycat here because I love the idea you had with your own gallery, and I want to start that as well. And it's awesome. I mean, I only want things on Solana. I mean, it's like I gotta tell the truth here. Like I love the pieces I own from Maria, for example. I got some muses. I got like a piece on Ethereum from the Fame ladies, but like I've never looked at them again, and that's sad, right? Like because I'm not feeling good on these chains. I'm not using them in my regular life, so I feel like these pieces deserve that attention, and that's why I want everything I own on Solana, just like you. And Solana is the chain for art, right?
Right, exactly, absolutely. I mean, when I pull up pieces on ETH, like it's great, and ETH is never going away. I don't think there's anything wrong with building on ETH, of course. But at the end of the day, when I'm looking at UI and I'm looking at like smooth transactions, my wallet on Solana versus my wallet on ETH, the ETH wallet is clunky, it's slower, it's more expensive. And if I can do the same thing on Solana and it's got a growing base, then why don't I use Solana? And that's just the truth. So if I want smooth transactions, if I want quick loading wallets, if I want good UI, that's where I'm going to spend my time. It's not going to be on ETH with MetaMask. In fact, MetaMask is one of the worst wallets I've ever used. There are some good wallets on ETH though. Like I like, what's that wallet called? I can't remember now. My Ether wallet. It's got probably one of the best interfaces, but then when you go to mint with that wallet, so many sites don't support it. It's just crazy. It makes no sense whatsoever. And then you have to incorporate a third-party plugin like Wallet Connect and try to make that work. It's just a big pain in the butt. So, if MetaMask could somehow upgrade itself and become more like my Ether wallet, it might be different, but then you're still left with like ETH speed and ETH fees, which don't make any sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not really familiar with other ETH wallets other than MetaMask. Unfortunately, it looks like MetaMask is probably the worst. But I agree on what you said, and looking forward to everything in December. It's going to be a great month, a great finish of the year. It's actually interesting, when it's like the last month of the year, and when I remember how we started in January, which was obviously not the best month for the GoodFellas, and now we are here, kind of, back at it again. It's great. Looking forward to everything that's coming in 2026, of course, trying to lift things up to the next level. And then we should be good, man. Any final words from you?
No, man, I think we pretty much covered it. We'll talk more about personal collections. We'll definitely get one going for you. I'll show you how to, kind of do some of the like heavy lifting on that. And then we'll start building maybe some UI for the other bosses. It'll be like one of those utilities that we roll out to the bosses first, and then, maybe offer it as a service to other people in the community and other collectors, wherever they are. I think it's just the way that it needs to be, because ultimately, if you're building a collection, you want that collection in your house, so to speak. And, my house is on Solana, so that's where I want my stuff.
Absolutely. So hope you guys have a great week. Looking forward to see everyone on Spaces on Friday. Until then, bye-bye.
Take care, guys.